Sunlight slices the sand into hard planes. The forward operating base squats like a rusted tooth against a dry horizon. Tarps flap. Antennas scrape the sky. Dust finds every seam. Private Anya Ramirov stands by the intake tent. Her uniform is serviceable, worn at the elbows. A thin scar traces her throat, pale as a whisper. She speaks little. She answers less. The men call her mute when they think she cannot hear. Sergeant Marlowe prowls the compound like it is his private domain. He likes the crack of his words as much as he likes the crack of his boot heels. His voice booms across corrugated metal and canvas. "Anya," he says to the circle of men by the water trailer. "Why put her on patrol? She won't speak when it matters. She's silence with a rifle." A ripple of laughter follows. The phrase lands like a stone. Some laughs are sharp, some are mean. Anya's mouth is a line. She doesn't flinch. Silence has kept her alive more than once. Marlowe points to a crate of rations. "If you need a translator, bring papers. If you need courage, bring her a microphone. For everything else, leave her out." Private Torres, who never misses a chance to bite, sneers. "Mute, nice. Should tape a note to her chest for the enemy." They mock in the mess tent. They mock at the ammo dump. Their phones record the jokes. Kernel videos of humiliation spread across shared devices like fuel. Outside the perimeter, mortar rounds thud in the distance. The outpost simulates pressure from the next shift of insurgents. The command net crackles with background traffic. Allied convoys, drone loiters, fluttering radios. General Klein arrives in a dust-swollen SUV, a figure in mirrored sunglasses. He walks the brief security line quietly, assessing. His jaw is a map of decisions. He sees the compound's tempo, then stops at the intake tent. He watches Anya. Marlowe notices the pause and smiles like a hawk tasting blood. "General," he calls, voice practiced. "We keep the talkers on the nets and the quiet ones in boots. Keeps the base tidy." Klein's face stays unreadable. He glances at Anya, then at Marlowe. For the first time, no one fills the silence. The general does not laugh. He nods once, as if filing something away. Tonight's exercise escalates to a red phase alert. The simulation will test the base's perimeter, stealth detection, and rapid penetration response. Failures will be logged, names will be written in bold. Command wants active resistance. Captain Rourke announces at roll call, clipboard snapping. We'll run 3 scenarios: point infiltration, night break, extraction. If anyone fails, we write it up. Understand? A chorus of stiff, soldierly replies answers him. Anya's name is called last. The men in line shift as if her shadow is contagious. Marlowe grins, loud enough for the circle to hear. "She stays rear. Last time she froze at a downed comms call, you remember? She just stared. Couldn't string a sentence together. We keep her where she won't harm good men." Torres snickers into his sleeve. "Mute on watch. That's a morale asset." The squad moves out at dusk. They run drills through false light and false smoke. There is shouting and steel, simulated screams echoing across sand. Pylons fall. Night vision goggles bloom green. Radios bark commands in clipped syllables. Anya walks the wire. Her boots eat dust. Her eyes find nothing and everything. She maps the base internally. Latrine, ammo locker, sweep angles, the slope with the old tire that catches wind just so. Her hands memorize choke points. Her silence calculates. At the ops tent, technicians whisper about a phantom sensor ping off the southern wire. Their voices are fast, nervous. "We're getting a micro blip on the perimeter sensor," one says. "Could be false." Another shrugs. "Probably sand. The kit's old." Rourke frowns. "We can't waste cycles on false positives. Leave the perimeter sweep for the night team." Marlowe overhears and smiles like a man who owns tomorrow. "Leave it. Let the quiet one check it later." Good use of her silence. Anya is assigned a support role, vehicle checks and ammo recount. A folding chair becomes her temporary office. The men hand her the clipboards with little ceremonies of dismissal. "You'll record, won't you?" Torres says. handing her the log. His tone sounds like a dare. Anya accepts the clipboard. Her fingers move steady. Her pen marks time and serials. She writes like a mapmaker. She writes like a soldier who has counted breaths in foxholes and promises. No one notices the way her jaw tightens when the sensor blip is mentioned. Outside, the desert breathes. Clouds smear themselves thin across the moon. The simulated assault timer ticks down. The night coils like a spring. Inside the tent, a junior tech scrambles with links to the observation drones. "Feed's glitching," he says. "We're losing the southern feed." "Great," Marlowe sneers. "Feed's fragile. Guess we'll see how the base performs without pretty pictures." Something in the ops tent shifts when the feed dies. Voices climb into panic. Radios start to strobe with priority flags. The exercise is now a real-time probe. Failure at this stage will mark the base as vulnerable. Marlowe shrugs, but his eyes scan the line, looking for the easy target to blame. His gaze lingers on Anya, as if she can be held accountable for silence itself. He points and laughs. The men around him echo the sound. Cameras blink. The mockery becomes a drumbeat. Across the compound, General Klein watches from the command vehicle, his silhouette steady. He does not smile. He folds his hands, then rises and walks toward the ops tent. When he moves, the swirl of low-ranked scorn hushes like wind over broken glass. Anya notices him approach. Her pen pauses. The world tightens to a line of horizon and a single heartbeat. One test remains before the red phase injection. The base braces. Someone somewhere has already placed a stake on who will fail. Someone bet words against quiet. Anya stares at the night and counts the seconds. Her silence is not emptiness. It is a shuttered door. Behind it sits a skill that no one expects to open tonight. They start small, like wind wearing at stone. A phone lights. A nicknamed clip appears on every device. Mute Anya scrolls across screens. The men laugh. The clip loops her standing quiet while others shout. Comments flash mean emojis. The cameras make cruelty portable. At Chow, Torres stages it. He drops a tray near Anya and fakes a stumble. Rice splashes, phones snap. "Clumsy mute," someone jokes, and the room howls. A squad sergeant posts the clip to the unit channel with a caption. The caption spreads beyond the tent. Senior officers snort and call it discipline theater. Anya cleans the mess without a word. Her silence becomes the punchline. During the night feed glitch, Marlowe sees a chance. He nudges a junior tech and swaps a cable near the southern sensor. The feed fails now. For real. Radios flash amber. Marlowe strides into the ops tent with a pointed look. He slams Anya's clipboard down like verdict. "You missed the blip," he declares. His tone makes it official. Phones pan to her face. A video captures him pointing and saying, "She froze last time. Same show." Captain Rourke demands logs. The junior tech stammers, blaming an operator error. Marlowe raises his voice until the junior caves and blames Anya's delayed note. The squad laughs, approval passing like a coin. Anya hands over her pen. Her report is neat, timestamps aligned. None of that matters. The error becomes her failure. General Klein orders a live debrief to display accountability. They bring everyone to the plaza under harsh flood lamps. The sand gleams like a stage. Rourke reads the after-action summary aloud. Names accumulate under the word fault. When he reaches Anya's line, he reads slowly, loud enough for the phones to catch every syllable. Marlowe eyes her and adds a theatrical aside. "She's a liability," he says. A few men clap, the sound small and cruel. They strip her of frontline duties in public. A corporal pins a high-visibility tab to her chest. Observer. The tab snaps like a brand. Someone jokes about giving her a bell to ring if she needs permission to speak. Torres posts a photo of the tab with a laughing emoji and tags a dozen friends. The unit channel fills with gifs and mocking messages. Her name becomes shorthand for failure. Validation by peers shifts to a mob. Faces that once nodded in casual cruelty now aim phone cameras at her as if hunting trophies. The drill's tempo becomes background noise to their performance. Even routine tasks turn punitive. When a convoy prep requires an extra hand, Marlowe moves her to an isolated vehicle bay. "Keep her where she can't hurt anyone," he says, and the phrase makes its own echo. An officer asks for a statement about the sensor blip. Rourke insists she speak on net before the general. He wants verifiable admission. The radio hisses dead air. Her voice is small when she tries, clipped by static and the scrambled frequency Marlowe ordered earlier. The transmission garbles. Marlowe smirks and replays the clip for the assembled officers. "See? She can't communicate under pressure," he says, as if the equipment, the cable swap, and his deliberate interference mean nothing. General Klein watches quietly, brows folded. He asks few questions. When he does speak, his voice stays low, measured. "Who altered the feed?" he asks, but the men look away. The unit code of silence kicks in. Marlowe answers with a practiced shrug. "Old kit, sir, operator error." The answer lands like a favor. No one challenges him. Humiliation reaches a crescendo when an external evaluator posts a summary online. The headline reads, "Unit fails red phase. Observer assigned." The article quotes a junior NCO who parrots Marlowe's line about Anya freezing. The internet lens turns her into a cautionary example. Replies range from pity to thinly veiled schadenfreude. Anya endures each cut. She records logs, polishes boots, hands over forms. She bows her head and steadies her breath. Her silence never breaks. But each escalation sharpens something in her: observation, calculation, patient attention to detail. She writes times. She memorizes cable runs. She watches who moves and when. At the end of the public debrief, as phones dim and the crowd disperses, General Klein does not applaud. He studies Anya a moment longer than courtesy allows. His eyes flick to a small notebook peeking from her vest. He tucks away that look like evidence. They believe they have finished the story. They have written the headline. They have set the role for the rest of the exercise. They do not know that their pattern of ridicule is a map. They do not know that the things they dismiss as weakness will become the exact tools needed to prove them wrong. The compound's alarms shift tone, a wail that drills marrow. "Red phase infiltration beginning," the speakers bark. The men scatter, grabbing rifles, shouting vectors. Dust lifts in clouds. Anya stays by the folding chair, still in her observer tab. Clipboard clutched, pen ready, forgotten, overlooked. Then it happens. A faint static bleeds across the command net. Not enemy chatter, not background noise, something sharper laced with cadence, a burst of code embedded in false radio static. Most hear only hiss. Anya's head snaps up. Her silence breaks, not with speech, but motion. She rips the notebook from her vest, scrawls strings of numbers, letters, staggered dots. Her hand flies. The cipher pulses in her skull like an old wound. "Sensor failure again?" A tech mutters, irritated. He bangs the console. "Always garbage signals." "No," Anya says softly. Her voice shocks the tent into pause. The first word she has spoken in hours. "Not garbage. It's grid coordinates. Masked." Marlowe scoffs instantly. "She thinks Hiss is math now? Fantastic. Next she'll read fortunes in sand." The squad laughs, relieved to laugh at her again. Anya doesn't answer. Her pen scratches furiously. She flips the page, sketching out a grid, cross-referencing times. Numbers cascade. A pattern resolves. A slow smile flickers across her scar. She walks to the console, pushes past Torres's arm. Her finger stabs the screen. "There. South wire, dead zone. They've mapped our blind angle. Infiltration in 90 seconds. The tent freezes. Techs fumble, pulling feeds. Static. No confirmation." Marlowe sneers, louder now. "Convenient. Our mute suddenly hears ghosts in the radio. You all buying this?" But then, a clatter outside, too sharp, too near. A trip sensor pops red across the board. Exactly at her mark. The screen blooms with a ghost silhouette, heat signature on the southern slope, 2 figures prone. A third crawling, exactly where she pointed. Gasps slice through the room. General Klein steps inside, quiet as thunder. His gaze cuts the map, then her notebook. You decrypted in seconds? Anya meets his eyes. It's old tradecraft, Russian number station overlay, masked in noise. Her voice stays calm, almost flat, but her hands are steady fire. A captain sputters. Impossible! We scrubbed those signals for months. No one— She did, Klein interrupts. His voice ends argument. Proof has entered the room. First evidence, first crack in their wall of scorn. Marlowe tries to pivot. Lucky guess, coincidence, even broken clocks. But outside, rifles bark. The perimeter surges alive, every unit now scrambling south where her notes marked. Shouts confirm. Contact, 3-man recon cell. Moving exactly as plotted. The validator, Klein himself, closes the gap. He takes her notebook, scans the spidery lines. He breathes once, slow. Clause Delta, he says at last. His words land heavy. Classified recognition. The officers know the term. A seal of authenticity reserved for operatives with clearance buried deep. The room swallows silence. Anya reclaims her pen, writes the next line. That was probe 1, she murmurs. Main assault vector hides behind it. Now no one laughs. The proof is undeniable. The mute has spoken and her words have teeth. The outpost shakes as the first exchange dies down. South wire secure, recon cell neutralized. The men glance at Anya now with something between suspicion and unease. She hasn't moved from the console. Her pen scratches another furious line. Her eyes narrow. She circles 3 bursts in the static feed. Different rhythm. Decoy, she whispers. Then louder, steady. North Ridge. 5-man crawl. 12 minutes. Ridiculous, Marlowe growls, voice raw with desperation. She's spinning fairy tales to cover her first lucky break. But the board lights up again, 12 minutes sharp. Heat signatures bloom on the North Ridge. 5 men, belly to dust, just as she said. The room exhales as one. Marlowe's face darkens. Still chance intel leaked? Don't canonize her yet? Anya ignores him. She turns another page. Her fingers tremble faintly, but her script is a storm, translating bursts of digits into lines of coordinates. Her voice drops into calm rhythm, unshaken. Phase 3 is not men, she says. It's signals. They'll jam drone feed, kill our eyes. 2 minutes. The tech staff laughs nervously. Impossible to predict, one mutters. We've never. Then every drone feed cuts to black. Screens strobe. The lab drowns in error codes. The silence after is brutal. No one breathes. General Klein's voice cuts the void. Who taught you this? Anya's scar shifts as she meets his gaze. It was not teaching. It was work. The word work lands heavy, unspoken history behind it. Men glance at each other. They know work can mean only one thing. Classified service, the kind that doesn't appear in personnel files. Klein exhales, recognition flashing in his eyes. Your signal's black. Ghost section. His voice is flat, but the air crackles. That unit is legend. Supposedly disbanded. The ops tent erupts in whispers. Ghost section. Myth, rumor, specialists who broke enemy nets before wars began. Operatives buried so deep even colonels doubted they existed. Marlowe's bravado collapses into a brittle laugh. Old wives' tales. You expect me to believe she— Enough! Klein's voice snaps like a rifle crack. He steps forward, his silver hair gleaming under the console lights. He holds up her notebook, covered in her cipher work. This isn't a guess. This is tradecraft I haven't seen in 15 years. She's not one of you. She was sent here for a reason. Every mocking smirk drains. Every phone lowers. Validation has arrived. Anya doesn't smile. She simply picks up her pen again. South and north were only diversions. Their real assault vector. She circles one more frequency burst. Is the tunnel beneath our waterline? They'll be here in 20. No one laughs this time. The mute has become the map, and the base is suddenly listening. The countdown blares overhead. 20 minutes compress into 20 heartbeats. Boots pound across gravel, squads rushing to the southern wall. But Anya stays at the console, eyes fixed on her notebook. The tunnel under the waterline, ignored, unscanned, dismissed as myth. She kneels, pressing her palm against the concrete floor, listening. Faint vibrations hum, too low for ears tuned only to gunfire. But she hears it, steady, advancing. "Contact underground!" she shouts. Her voice carries like a whip crack. Men freeze. Marlowe shakes his head, defiant to the last. "It's paranoia! No one breaches through solid!" The ground erupts. A section of sandbags buckles, geysers of dust shooting upward. Enemy silhouettes claw through the breach, rifles glinting under flood lamps. Gasps tear through the defenders. Anya is already moving. She slams a switch on the console, rerouting power lines, forcing the reserve grid to surge through the water pumps. A roar fills the compound. Valves blast open, flooding the tunnel in reverse. The intruders stumble, swept back in a torrent of mud and sewage. Shouts echo, swallowed by water. The base stares in disbelief. She mapped it, timed it, crushed it, alone. General Klein steps forward, voice like thunder. That maneuver wasn't luck. That was Ghost Section doctrine. Classified until now. His gaze pins Marlowe. She just saved this outpost. Phones fall silent. No one laughs. Anya straightens, dust streaking her face, scar catching the light. Her voice, calm, final. "Silence was my weapon. You mistook it for weakness." Knockout line. "I was never mute." The flood recedes, leaving silence thick as ash. The outpost steadies. Soldiers who mocked her now watch with something they don't know how to name. Respect, fear, maybe both. Marlowe lowers his eyes first. The smirk that once ruled the compound is gone. He mutters, "I was wrong." His words drop like stones in the dust. General Klein raises Anya's notebook for all to see. This woman carried clearance deeper than any of you imagined. She cracked codes you couldn't even detect. She neutralized a breach that would have ended us. That is soldiering. Phones slip quietly into pockets. No one dares replay their recordings. Shame has weight. It hangs on every bowed head. Anya says nothing. She doesn't need to. She wipes mud from her hands and returns the pen to her vest pocket. Her scar catches the lamplight. No longer a mark of ridicule, but of endurance. The respect earned tonight will not be undone. Her silence has become signal. Her voice, when used, carries the weight of proof. General Klein closes the debrief with a single nod. From this day forward, she is not an observer. She is the standard. The men salute, some stiffly, some ashamed, but all of them certain. Anya returns the gesture, her eyes steady, her voice a whisper for the first time all night. Mission held. If her story struck something in you, if you've ever been underestimated, silenced, or mocked, remember, the proof is always in the doing. Stand firm, sharpen your skill, and let your silence speak when words no longer matter.